there's an effect we've learned to work with where the disconfirming knowledge is not in doubt by the client. It's real. And yet the juxtaposition experience doesn't dissolve the target learning. And what we've learned is responsible for that is the situation where the client is going to encounter a new problem if the target learning dissolves. And the emotional brain sees that coming and doesn't let it dissolve.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah, please.
Let's use the example you just supplied, Matt, about rejection or low self-worth. You know, it's so widespread. I think it's the most widespread psychological and emotional problem in my experience as a therapist. Low self-worth in its many, many different forms, whether it's feelings of shame that come up or a loud inner critic that sort of beats up the client, self-trashing, many different forms of low self-worth. But what we find is true of all those different forms of it is, well, you'd think that if the negative view of self were to simply fall away, it would only have positive effects. That's what we naively expect by common sense, but it doesn't work that way, turns out. Low self-worth is learned. It's an emotional learning, and it's learned from perceiving negative messages or meanings about oneself. Receiving negative messages, whether overt abuse and mistreatment, being told, you know, how stupid can you be? You're no good. Who wants you? I have a client whose father would go off on a tirade, clearly indicating he'd rather have the neighbor's boy for his son. Ouch. So it can be very explicit, but can be very implicit and like neglect, just neglect with no words or overt direct mistreatment, but just absence, neglect. That is taken to mean by young children as, I don't deserve love. They construe low self-worth to make sense of the neglect. The human mind, even from earliest weeks of life, is construing, making sense, learning how this works. And low self-worth is based on believing the negative messages in the mistreatment about oneself. Or let's say construing mistreatment to mean, I don't deserve love, I'm not good enough, something's wrong with me, it's my fault. Now look at what happens if you shed the low self-worth. You still have to make sense of the mistreatment. That's still in your memory that mom and dad did X, Y, Z to me or neglected me. And if suddenly you're no longer thinking it means you're no good and you deserved it, then what does it have to mean?
Mom and dad are no good.
Yes, it means they weren't just being ordinary parents and I deserved it.
Yeah. That
was mistreatment. And when the abuse was severe, that is an ordeal to suddenly see it that way. It means betrayal. It means your image of your parents comes down, collapses into, you know, from being gods to being quite problematic human beings. It means, and those are just 2 or 3 of the bad things, or the distressing things, I should say, that it means.
And these calculations are going on in the unconscious realm. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And working this way, we've learned to know that they're going on, even if we haven't brought it into awareness yet. So we're very respectful and tender and slow in working in this territory. And so that's an example, a very common example of why a juxtaposition experience that in principle could disconfirm, oh, it's my fault, I'm no good, doesn't dissolve that because of what's waiting to be felt if it dissolves. And so we have to make that whole chain of connected meanings come into awareness and help the client be ready at whatever pace the client can handle to be ready and start adjusting to the new meaning that will show up when the target meaning dissolves.
Well, if you want to know more about the science of psychotherapy, come across to our website, thescienceofpsychotherapy.com, and our podcast of the same name, and learn more about the science of you.